David Uosikkinen in the Pocket is sponsored by the School of Rock Main Line. I'd like to thank the School of Rock Main Line, located at 511 Old Lancaster Road in Berwyn. You can visit their website at schoolofrock.com. Ask for Dave Marsh or Rick Allison.
Podcast. This is our first podcast in 2023. We're kicking it off on this little kind of cloudy day here in Philadelphia, but it's almost 60 degrees here. It's kind of wacky weather, but we're digging it, and it's great to be back. I hope everybody had a great new year, and of course, like every podcast, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Freddie B. How you doing, Fred?
I'm well, and you, sir?
Good to see you, brother.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Good morning to you.
And
my surprise co-host this week, I hit my buddy Kenny Aronson up and I said, Kenny, we got a great one this week, and it'd be cool if you can join us. So Kenny Aronson is also co-hosting with us. The man, I think the greatest bass player in the world, right there. We're looking right there, Kenny Aronson.
Double A.
Yeah. You know, I'm just here. I'm just here to tell Daryl that I'm still working on the backwoods Freddy figure, man. It's good exercise, man.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. So let me. So before we get started, because I think we're going to be yakking and talking about all this stuff, I am truly. We are all truly honored to have the great Daryl Davis joining us today on the podcast. Daryl, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful, guys. Glad to be here.
Man, I'm
glad to be in 2023.
You know what? Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how we all feel. Do you have a nice New Year?
I stayed home. I didn't work this time around.
Oh, my God. Well, it's the first time I've worked in like over 30 years. Kenny and I played a gig. Were you home too, Freddie?
Yeah.
It's always it's the best way to go. And I love staying home, but Kenny and I were, well, I mean, listen, once we said we were in to do the gig, we were in to do the gig. We played with Annabella, our friend Quentin Jones, who we all know through with Daryl, invited us to play with Annabella from Bow Wow Wow on New Year's Eve. So QDK played a set, and Annabella flew in from Los Angeles, and we played 9 songs with her. So, we're still kind of feeling. Look, man, I'm turning 67. I'm feeling it, man. Still after a couple of days, man. So, but it was awesome. It was awesome. And so, enough about me and New Year's. I want to talk about Daryl Davis because this week I have been engrossed of course, when we met, Kenny and I met Daryl when we were out playing with Linda Gale Lewis in Washington, D.C. I can't even remember that name of was it a coffee house or a club that we played at, Kenny? Do you remember the place?
Daryl, it's your neighborhood, sort of.
What, remember
the name of that place again?
Yeah, it was a place in Rockville, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Called Hank Beatles.
It's a famous joint, from what I understand.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's not worldwide known. It's famous here in Montgomery County.
Yeah.
Because it's been around for so long.
I heard that.
Everything else closed down, reopened as something else.
Yeah.
It's still there.
But they have live music, which was so cool.
Yes.
And Kenny and I and Quentin were back in Linda Gale Lewis, and we met Daryl at that show, and from the moment I met you and I heard your incredible story and your bravery and your inquisitiveness, where you do what you do, I was like compelled to go read everything I could find out about you. I mean, remarkable. I was watching a video I sent to the guys. You did an interview with John Shavers, I believe it was, an interview, a guy, I forget the name of the network, but you've done so many of them, but it was an interview where we were talking about, growing up. Well, first of all, for our listeners and people that are watching this, Daryl is an amazing musician, guitar player, piano player who's played with the greats. He played with Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, many, many more. But he comes from that day. I mean, we're talking about Daryl Davis, Johnny Johnson, you know, a guy that plays that piano that like very few people can do the way you do it. When we played with you a few weeks ago at Zootropolis, I mean, the groove, it was scary, Daryl, how great you played, man. It was like playing next to a Hummer truck, you know, just the way you were grooving and playing that left hand, man.
I didn't come from that day. I'm a generation or so.
Yeah, exactly. You're not
learned from them,
right?
You know,
Yeah.
Johnson was my teacher.
But you played with those guys, right?
Pardon me.
But you know, you played with all those guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, because I obviously looking you up. I'm you know, we come from the same. I was born in 1956. You were born in 58. One of the things I noticed about your story when I was reading it, about when you were telling this story about being a Cub Scout. I was a Cub Scout. I don't know about any of you guys, but I was a Cub Scout. Unfortunately, I got kicked out of the Cub Scouts. I don't know why. I don't know. I didn't pay my dues or something. I got booted out for some reason. But I remember those parades and your story about the parade. Kenny, I don't know if you know this, but this story, if I know, you know, we got an hour, but I'd love you to tell that again about your experiences growing up and looking at your first interaction with real racism, where you know, like I didn't have any. No one was throwing rocks and bottles at me, but I went through busing at my school. I remember when I was a kid. I grew up in Levittown, PA, and they started busing, I think, in 1963 or 64. And in the African American neighborhood, they were busing kids over to our school where, you know, maybe there was one African American kid in my class, and I remember there was friction in the school, and you know, I grew up with European parents that, you know, I was kind of like, what's going on here, you know? But what you experienced was true assault on a young person that was like, what the hell is going on here, man? Can you tell that story?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Let me go back a little further than that story so you'll understand why I felt the way that I felt and why I didn't realize what was going on. Like you said, I was born in 58, so I'm 64 years old. But starting at the age of 3 in 1961, I began traveling the world. I was a child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American embassy kid. I was born in Chicago. My parents were from Virginia, Roanoke and Salem. But my dad was, you know, U.S. State Department. So you go to a country, you're assigned there for 2 years. And after that 2 years, you come back home here to the States. You're here for a few months or maybe a year if you request it, and then back overseas to another country. And so I lived in Africa. I lived in Europe.
Wow.
Visited many different places in between. My first exposure to school was overseas. I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade, all in different countries around the world. And my classmates back, you know, we're talking the early 60s, right? My classmates back then were from all over the world. My classmates were Nigerian, Italian, Japanese, Russian, Czechoslovakian, French, German, Swedish. Anybody who had an embassy where we were, all of their kids went to the same school. So that being my first exposure to school became my baseline for what school should be. You know, that's all I knew, right?
Yeah.
And we all got along.
Yeah.
We worked together.
And you're probably getting a great education. I mean, the schools are there. You were, you know,
Absolutely.
Languages. You probably had amazing education at that time.
You know, of course, I didn't realize it at the time.
Exactly.
It was the norm. It was my norm, my baseline. Okay, so every time I come home in between those 2 years, right after those 2 year assignments, I'd be back here in my own country, and I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated.
Right.
And back then, we didn't have the diversity that I had overseas or that we have today in this country.
Yeah.
It was just black kids and white kids, you know? And so even though desegregation was passed 4 years before I was born by the Supreme Court in 1954, it didn't mean that schools integrated overnight. It took years and years. Right?
Yeah.
Some are still trying to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But anyway, one of the times that I came back, So now you have my background. One of the times that I came back was 1968. So now I'm 10 years old. I'm in 4th grade, and I'm in a school in which I was one of 2 black kids in the entire school. Myself in 4th grade and the little black girl in 2nd grade. So, you know, I rarely saw her, except for like at recess or lunchtime. But, you know, she's in 2nd grade, I'm in 4th grade. So all of my friends were 4th and 5th graders, and they all were white. And so some of my guy friends from that class were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join.
Yeah.
So I joined these scouts, and we all had fun, had a great time, had a great den mother, all that kind of stuff. And we were in a place called Belmont, Massachusetts at the time, right outside of Boston. So we had a parade from Lexington to Concord. It's called Patriots Day or something.
Right, yeah.
And we commemorate the march. I mean, the ride of Paul Revere.
Yeah, you walked by Harvard. I remember you saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so now Lexington and Concord are right next door to Belmont. I ride my bicycle back and forth to either of those towns.
Yeah.
So we're marching. The streets are blocked off. Sidewalks on either side are lined with nothing but white people. And they're waving and cheering and yelling, you know, the British are coming and all that.
Right.
So, so we got to a certain point in the parade route when suddenly, pow, I'm getting hit with bottles and rocks and soda pop cans and just, you know, debris, small debris from the street by just a small group of white spectators.
Yeah, that's all it takes, right?
Yeah, over on the right side. And, you know, I look over and, you know, they're throwing stuff. It was only like maybe 2 kids a year or 2 older than me who I did not know, and a couple of adults. I assume maybe their parents.
It's just mind blowing that when you said a couple of adults, I saw it. I was like, what?
And
you know, did you learn that? You know,
right? So, you know, when I first saw this, my first thought was understand, I had no precedent for this. So my first thought was, oh, these people over here, they don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was, right? Racism didn't even enter my mind. I didn't even know what racism was. Okay? So it wasn't until my den mother, my cub master, my troop leader came running back. All they, you know, they all were white, and huddled over me with their bodies and escorted me out of the danger.
Wow.
You know, that I realized I'm the only Scout getting hit. You know, what's going on here? You know, I'm the target. What did I do?
Yeah.
And I kept asking them, why are they doing this? Why are they
and you never thought, oh, it's color. You didn't even think about that, right?
No.
Who would?
I'd be around every color in the world by that time.
Right.
So you know, I kept asking them, why are they doing this to me? And all they would do is shush me and rush me along, tell me to keep moving. Right. So they never answered the question. And at the end of the day, when I got back home, my mother and father were not at the parade. And, you know, they were questioning me, how did you trip and fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I did not trip and fall down. I told them exactly what had happened. So for the first time in my life, my mom and dad, I didn't have big brothers and sisters to learn things from. Right, I'm an only child.
Okay,
my folks got it right the first time.
Yeah, there you go. So, they did all right. Hey, man, they did all right.
Yeah,
they did all right.
So my mom and dad sat me down and explained to me what racism was.
Yeah,
and I'm not joking with you guys.
They told you didn't know.
I had no idea. I didn't even know what racism was. I never even heard the word. It was not in my sphere.
Yeah.
Okay? And my parents are telling me something. I always trusted my parents to tell me the truth, you know, or give me answers to questions I couldn't figure out.
Right.
And when they were telling me this, I swear to you, I literally thought they were lying to me because it made no sense. My 10-year-old brain.
Like, why would they not? Why would someone hate me?
Yeah, my 10-year-old brain did not process the idea that someone who had never spoken to me, never seen me before, knew nothing about me, would want to hurt me for no other reason than this.
Crazy.
The color of my skin. It made no sense. And furthermore, to my point, the people doing that to me did not look any different than my friends at school or my fellow Scouts, or for that matter, my friends overseas, whether they were my fellow Americans at the embassy or my little French or Danish or Swedish or Australian friends.
Right.
You know, so my parents had to be wrong. It had nothing to do with the color of my skin. Why are you telling me this? Well, guess what? 1968, right? So a lot of things began happening, and
I mean, what a time, you know. I mean, on
yeah.
every level,
on every level. And on the
every
biggest level,
Yeah.
Dr. King was assassinated.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, I quickly learned that this phenomenon that my parents had told me about was actually true. They had not lied to me.
Mm.
And that fall, we moved back overseas on another assignment.
Mm.
So I returned to normalcy, if you will.
Yeah.
But every time
where did you move to? I'm just curious because where did you move
to? A place called Conakry, Guinea, on the west coast of Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but every time I'd come home, there'd be some major incident.
Yeah.
But it was at that time, at age 10, after that incident, that I formed the question in my mind, which stays with me today: how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
Yeah.
And that leads into how I got involved with the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis.
I mean, for people that are watching this, I mean, your story about engaging. I wrote the guy in Baltimore. The couple things blew me away. Story about the guy in Baltimore. There was a police chief that went to jail or something like that.
Robert White, yes.
Robert White. That fascinates me. But basically, Daryl would engage members of the KKK and engage them in conversation, befriend them. And in a lot of cases, you've had 200 members, probably more, that have left the KKK, and because they saw another ideology or listened to another person's point of view, and understood what they were talking about was completely insane. I mean, for whatever reason, that's fear that kicks in with and it, like you mentioned, the parents with those two kids at the parade. I mean, that's taught. That's something that's learned. I mean, it brings me back. We had one or two African American families that lived in my neighborhood, and I grew up when my parents were from Finland. So my dad came. I remember being on the boat, and he said, he talked to me later on. Like a young kid, telling me about there was like a whites only bathroom, blacks only bathroom, and he thought it was like really, because that wasn't going on. Racism was foreign to him, or I don't know. He thought it was. Well, he didn't like it. Basically, he didn't like it. So, he educated me when it came to that. But I remember my mom telling me where somebody came to her house with a petition not to sell the house to an African American family.
Right.
You had to sign it. My mother kicked her out, which I was so very proud of my mom. You got to get out of here. But I guess it was those times, But like we've done a. We're at a time right now after what we experienced a couple of years ago in Charlottesville, where these groups, they're not as many. They call themselves something different than the KKK. They got different names for these.
They're offshoots
of that.
Yeah.
And they hate blacks and they hate Jews and they hate anything that isn't what they are. And it's scary. I mean, it was never something that was. I personally know all the organizers of that Charlottesville event. You do.
They all have been right here in my house.
Get out.
No, I'm serious.
So yeah.
I've been.
I mean, it's amazing. But basically, you've been successful in turning some of these people and having few, because I mean, it's hate, and you carry that stuff around, and that'll eat you up alive.
Yes, it will.
It amazes me, and it amazes me that you've been. I guess in a lot of ways it's cathartic for you, that makes you, when you question something like that you experience when you're a young person, and it scars you for life. But your way of healing was that you were going to go and find out what is the core root of this problem, and extricate it, man.
I wasn't trying to heal my own wounds. I was trying to heal theirs.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I know. You're right. You're right about that. Yeah. Exactly. Well, you helped a lot. It's amazing.
Daryl, I have a question. Have you ever done any research with these white supremacist people on tracing their genealogy back to see how much mixed blood might be in them and their.
Oh yeah.
Good
I mean,
question.
because we're
Whoa.
basically we're a country of mutts. I mean,
Right,
how
right.
many people are pure of anything?
Right.
Right. And they,
That's-
Amen.
even if they take one of those tests and it shows, they got some, Arabic in them or some African or whatever, or Asian in them, they're gonna deny it.
Deny.
Yeah.
And amazing. So
Wow.
through all your endeavors, you do. Anyone's watching, you can look up Daryl. He has a TED Talk that's remarkable. The Accidental Courtesy is the documentary film that you've done that's remarkable. Documents what you do. And it seems like it's one of those jobs, it's so full time that it amazes me that you do the other side of your life is you're a brilliant artist. You're a brilliant musician. And you played, I mean, are you playing all the time? Because the way you played a few weeks ago, man, you were
I used to play all the time.
Now,
now I just do the gigs, that I really want to do. When I am honored to be called by you and Kenny and Quentin, I'll come out and do it.
It was fun. Well, we got some more stuff. We're thinking about something else for you too. So
okay,
we hope to do it again. But
I would much rather be on stage
playing
that rock and roll and seeing people
look at that photo
and dancing to my music than being at a Klan rally watching people in robes and hoods march around a burning cross yelling white power.
Were you did you ever feel now your story about where your secretary, I believe her name was Mary, she invited the guy, the grand whatever you call him, over to, and he didn't want to tell him that you were African American.
Right.
And you show up at this hotel, and he walks in, and the soda story, Kenny, Freddie, he puts Mary buys them Coca-Cola, puts them in a bucket and with a bunch of ice, and here's this guy that comes in. That's going to, his meeting, and Daryl's going to engage him in conversation. But apparently, Daryl was told that the guy will kill him. The guy was like, he's been told, watch out, this guy will kill you.
Yeah, I was told by one of his former members. This was the Klan leader, and I wanted to meet him. I wanted to interview him. I wanted to ask him, how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
Yeah.
Right. And so I was given his information from a former member on the condition that I not tell this guy where I got his personal information. Right. And the guy warned me. He said, "Daryl, do not fool with him. He will kill you."
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's the whole reason I need to see him. Why would he kill me? He doesn't even know me.
Right.
So basically, I had my secretary Mary, as David mentioned. Now, Mary is white. Well, she's passed on now, but she was white. And I only mentioned that, not that I could care about anybody's skin color, but I gave her the number and asked her to call the guy.
Right.
Because I figured if I call him, because I'm the one who had the number, he might detect in my voice that I'm black. I'm not talking to you, click. And my whole project would have ended before it ever got started. Sure. But I knew that if Mary called him, he would know that the voice on the other end of the line was a white woman. And he would not automatically assume that this white woman is A, working for a black man, and B, working for a black man who's writing a book on the Klan, because they did not exist. My book was the first book written by a black author on the Klan from face-to-face interviews. So I had her call, and I told her, do not tell him that I'm black. If he asks, don't lie to him, but don't give him reason to ask. Yeah. And then if he agrees to do the interview, obviously he can figure out that I'm black when he sees me, right? And the second reason why I didn't want him to know was because if he knew I was black and he still agreed to do the interview, he would have time to prepare different answers for a black interviewer than he would give a white interviewer. Right. So I wanted it to be spontaneous. Mm. Okay, so she called. He agreed to do the interview. He didn't ask what color I was, etc. So Mary and I got a hotel room, not too far from where he is, and we got there several hours early. I gave her some money, sent her down the hall to the vending machine to get some soda pop. And she got it, put it in the ice bucket, filled it with ice, set it on the dresser.
Yeah.
And we waited. And right on time, right to the minute, there was a knock on the door. Now, the way the room just happens to be, if you guys are standing in the hallway of this motel, looking through the door to my room, you cannot see who's in the room. You have to come into the room, turn to your right, and then go around the corner, and then you'll see who's in the room.
Right.
So I took the little lamp table, took the lamp off, and put the table in the most obscure corner of the room. I put a chair on one side for the clan leader, a chair on the other side for me. And beside the leg of my chair, I had a black canvas bag that contained a cassette recorder, some blank cassettes, and a copy of the Bible, because the Ku Klux Klan claims to be a Christian organization. And they claim that the Bible preaches racial separation. Now, in my reading of the Bible, I've never seen that.
Where does it say that?
Pull up my Bible and say, here, please show me chapter and verse where it says blacks and whites must be separate, right? So I put the cassette recorder in the middle of the table, all in hopes that A, the guy would come in after he realizes I'm black, and B, he would allow me to record the interview. Okay, so right at 5:15, knock, knock, knock on the door. Mary hops up, runs around the corner. I'm still seated back there where you can't see me until you come in. She opens the door, and in walks this guy's bodyguard. And he's wearing military camouflage, the Ku Klux Klan patch, which is the red circle, white cross, blood drop right there, the letters KKK on this side, and embroidered on his cap, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And on his hip, he had a semi-automatic Glock handgun. Wow. And he comes in, he comes around the corner, and he sees me and just freezes. Now, his boss, the leader, is on the other side of the corner and doesn't realize that his bodyguard has stopped short. So he comes around the corner and boom, smacks that guy in the back, and they both, tumble forward, and they're stumbling around trying to get their balance. They're like, looking all around the room, like, and I'm just sitting there at the table, like, looking at them. Yeah. And I can see the apprehension in their faces. Yeah. I knew what they were thinking. They're thinking, did the desk clerk give us the wrong number? or just an ambush, Right. And so I stood up and I went like this to show I had nothing in my hands.
Yeah.
And I walked forward. I put my right hand out. I introduced myself. And the Klan leader shook my hand, as did the bodyguard. So far, so good. I said, please, come on in, have a seat. So, the Klan leader sat down, and the bodyguard stood at attention to his right. And before I sat down, the leader asked me if I could show him some ID. So I gave him my driver's license, and he says, "Oh, you live on such and such street in Silver Spring." Yeah. And now that had me a little concerned, because why is he looking at my address? Yeah. Is he going to come to my house and burn a cross? I mean, what's up, right? But I did not want to let him know that he had unnerved me a little bit. Well, I want to let him know, don't be coming to my house uninvited for any nefarious activity, right? Yeah. So I said, yes. I said, that is where I live, and you live at. And I recited his street address. So that way I level the playing field, right? If you come to me, I might come visit you. So we're going to combine all these visits in the hotel room, right?
Yeah, that's good.
I did not find out that day. It was several months later that I really had no reason to fear him coming to my house. My street right out here, it's a long street, runs through two neighborhoods. One of his Klan members lived right down the road here.
Wow.
I had no way of knowing that. He recognized my street, and because he had to go on that street to get to his member's house.
Wow.
Today, that same member sits in a federal prison in the state of Maine for committing a hate crime. So he's there for a long, long time.
Wow.
So anyway, we got on with this interview, right?
Yeah.
And every time the leader would say, "Mr. Davis, the Bible says," or if my cassette ran out of tape, I'd reach down into my bag to retrieve the Bible or get a fresh cassette. Every time I'd reach down, the bodyguard would reach up to his hip.
Yeah.
He never pulled the gun, but he'd rest his hand on the butt of the gun. And so, he's doing his job. I understood that. He doesn't know me. I'm the enemy. I'm a black guy, right? And he doesn't know what I have in my bag. So he's doing his job to protect himself and his boss. So I got all that. So, but after about 45 minutes of, me reaching down, him reaching up, he stopped all that. He realized there was no threat in the bag, and he relaxed. And I went in and out of the bag. He didn't move. Well, a little over an hour into this interview, the leader and I were just, talking casually like you and I are right now. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this very short, very fast, very bizarre noise happened. It sounded like a, that was it. And we all jumped because it was so out of context. And I flew up out of my chair and hit the table because I knew that he had made this noise, the leader.
Yeah.
How did I know that? Because I didn't make it. So if he didn't do something, he blamed it on somebody else. So I had gone into what you call survival mode. When you fear for your life, you will do anything and everything to survive. And there are only about 4 things you can do. Some people, they faint, they pass out. The fear is so great, their brain cannot process
That's heavy.
The brain shuts down and you fall out and faint. I don't do that. Other people, their muscles will constrict and they'll ball up and start shaking and they can't move because that's called paralysis by fear. You can be punching them, kicking them. They're not even trying to block the blows. They move like that.
Right.
You ever seen anybody get into a fight and they ball up into a fetal position and they can't move? That's called paralysis by fear. I don't do that either. Third thing people will do when they fear for their life is to run away. That is the best option. As quickly as you can, separate yourself from the source of fear. Get away from it. And that is the option that I would have chosen had it been available. But it was not available because you cannot outrun a bullet in a motel room. Okay? I was not armed. My secretary, Mary, was not armed. The only person who I knew for sure who was armed was the bodyguard. I could see his gun on his hip. I did not know if the leader had a gun up under his suit and tie or not. All I knew was, hey, I don't want to die today. So your fourth option, your last option, is to do what is called a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. And when I flew up out of my chair, hit the table, I was on my way to dive across that table, grab the Klan leader, grab the bodyguard, and slam them down to the ground and take away the bodyguard's gun and immobilize that situation. Okay. Well, when I hit the table, I'm only, a lamp table in a motel room is a very small table. So
sure. I'm visualizing it.
Yeah. So I'm looking right into the guy's eyes as I'm getting ready to come across that table. And I didn't say a word to him. I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were saying clearly, what did you do? Well, his eyes had fixated on mine. And I could read his eyes. He didn't say a word either. His eyes were saying to me, what did you just do? The bodyguard got his hand on his gun again, looking at both of us like, what did either one of y'all just do?
Right.
Mary was sitting to my left on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs in the room. And she realized what had happened. And she began explaining it to us when it happened again. And we all began laughing. The bucket containing the ice and soda pop was sitting to the left on the dresser. The ice had begun melting, and the can of soda was shifting down the ice. That was it.
And you thought it was
shot over a melting ice cube. Okay, I mean that's how crazy it was. But this was a lesson. I won't say it was a lesson learned that day. It was a lesson taught that day. The learning would come later.
Interesting that it happened too.
Yeah, the lesson taught is this. All because some foreign _highlight circle the word foreign entity of which we were ignorant, that being the bucket of ice cans of soda. I mean, we knew it was over there, but we'd long forgotten about it because we're so engrossed in conversation. All because some foreign entity entered into our little comfort zone of which we were ignorant, we became fearful. Ignorance creates fear, right? If you don't address that fear and keep it in check, that fear in turn will escalate into hatred because we hate the things that frighten us. If you don't keep that hatred in check and address it, it in turn will escalate into violence and destruction. We want to destroy those things that we hate. Why? Because they frighten us. But guess what? At the end of the day, they may have been harmless and we were simply ignorant, which was the case here. Now, so you saw the chain almost unfold to completion. Completion would have been had the bodyguard drawn his gun and shot me or shot Mary, or had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them, trying to do my job, which is to protect me and protect my secretary.
Do you remember what year that was?
Yes, I do. 1991.
Wow.
Okay, so now you mentioned Charlottesville.
Mm.
You all saw what happened in Charlottesville. There is an example of that train going out to completion.
Yeah.
That happened on August 12th, 2017, Charlottesville. On that day, there was a lot of ignorance in Charlottesville. On August 12th, 2017, there was a lot of fear in Charlottesville.
Mm.
There was a lot of hatred in Charlottesville that day. And what did it culminate in? It culminated in destruction. When a white supremacist got inside his vehicle, attempted to murder as many counter-protesters as he could, he succeeded in injuring just over 24 and murdering one young lady named Heather Hines.
I know.
Ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, hatred breeds destruction. Now, I think, I've been doing this work now for about 40 years in my gigs. And here's what I know and what works for me. We have been addressing these issues ass backwards, top down. All right. The top down approach works when you're dealing with companies, chains of command, departments, things like that. You want to make sure that everybody is straight at the top.
Right.
And then that will trickle down to the people down below, like say a police department. Okay, if the brass, the administration of the police department, the chief and everybody, if they're lackadaisical and loose, then their subordinate officers on the street are going to be the same.
They're going to be the same thing.
Yeah, so you tighten up the top and it trickles down.
Sure.
Okay, that works for a department, but when you're or a corporation, when you're dealing with something like this, it has to be bottom up. So what I say is this: forget about the destruction. What's been destroyed is not coming back.
No.
Forget about the hatred. Okay, the destruction and the hatred are byproducts of the nucleus. They're byproducts of the source. Okay, forget about the fear. That's another symptom, another byproduct. The source of all this, the nucleus, is the ignorance.
Yeah.
If you cure the ignorance, then there's nothing to fear.
Mm.
We fear what we're ignorant of. All right. If you cure the ignorance, there's nothing to fear. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to get mad about and destroy.
Mm.
The good thing is this: ignorance is that source. The good thing is there is a cure for ignorance. Mm. That cure is called education.
Yeah.
Okay? And unfortunately, there's no cure for stupidity. So if you give somebody the education and they don't use it, nothing you can do. But when you provide education and exposure, you are curing the ignorance. Okay.
You've been out doing this. This is something that you've been doing for a long time, educating people on this. It's amazing that you do this.
Let me tell you something. I have played in all 50 states.
Yeah. I
have been between traveling as a little kid with my parents, with my dad's job, and now as an adult musician traveling, playing around the world. When you combine those two sets of travels, I've been to 61 countries on 6 continents. Now, what does that mean? It means that I've been exposed to a multitude of skin colors, ethnicities, religions, cultures, ideologies, etc. And all of that has helped shape who I've become.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing that I've learned is this: no matter how far I go from our country, the United States, whether it's right next door to Canada or right next door to Mexico or halfway around the globe, no matter how different the people that I encounter may be, maybe they don't look like me, maybe they don't speak as I do or worship the way I do, I always conclude one thing: we all are human beings. And as such, everybody wants these 5 core values in their lives. Everybody wants to be loved. Yeah. Everybody wants to be respected. We all want to be heard. Yeah. We all want to be treated fairly. And we all want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family.
Indeed.
And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values or any of those values when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a culture or society in which we are unfamiliar or uncomfortable, I can guarantee you that our navigation of that of that situation, that culture, that society will be much more smooth and much more positive. So that's what I exemplify when I deal with these people.
Yeah.
You know, let me give you one of my favorite quotes of all time.
Yeah, love to hear it.
You remember Mark Twain, right?
Yeah,
Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had a lot of quotes. This one is called The Travel Quote by Mark Twain.
Yeah.
And Mark Twain said, and I'll quote it for you. Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime."
Brilliant.
Wow.
It's brilliant. You know, the story that you told about, you know, because this segues into the music thing. I one other thing I found on the internet, we were talking about a guy, you sat in with a band, and the band played at this place a number of times, but they never had, you know, you were playing piano with them, and the guy he couldn't believe, you know, which I think
Jerry Lee Lewis thing.
Yeah, well, you were playing. He said couldn't believe that. He goes, I never seen basically a black man play piano like he played piano, like Jerry Lee Lewis, and which
well, what happened?
We were playing with you. It's kind of like what, but that story's amazing.
Okay. So what happened was this: country music had made a resurgence. You know, country music has always been around, just like the blues. You know, it's always going to be around. But it wasn't mainstream on the top 40 anymore.
Yeah.
But a movie had come out called Urban Cowboy.
Right.
Right, Mechanical Bull, all the line dance.
Yeah.
So country music became popular again. And all the clubs and bars that were playing disco and top 40, they switched their format to country. So, you know, if you were playing blues back then, you know, you were lucky if you got 2 gigs a month. But if you played country, you could work every night of the month. So I joined a country band. And, you know, as musicians, we all know there's no difference between country and blues. It's the same 3 chords. You know, they're just the only thing that separates us is society.
Move it on over.
Move it on over. It's 12-bar blues by Hank Williams.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, I joined a country band. The band was established here in the Maryland area. And I was the only black guy in the band, and usually the only black guy wherever we played. Now, they had played a place up in a town called Frederick, Maryland, about an hour and 20 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. And it was called the Silver Dollar Lounge. Yeah. The Silver Dollar Lounge had a reputation of being an all-white lounge, that black people were not welcome. There were no signs, you know, that said whites only, you know, no colors, nothing like that. Right. You know, you remember the signs, you know, your father was talking about your colored restroom, water fountain, none of that kind of stuff. It just had that reputation. So here, you know, if you go somewhere where alcohol is being served and you're not welcome, it's not a good combination. So here I am in the Silver Dollar Lounge with this band, you know, and you know, they played there before. And so I'm the only black guy in the whole place. And, you know, we did our first set, people dancing, having a good time, took a break, and I'm following the band over to the band table, you know, where they're all going to sit.
Yeah.
And I feel somebody from behind put their arm around my shoulder. I don't know anybody in here, right?
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, I see the whole band in front of me walking that way, and I don't know anybody in here, so I'm like, you know, turning around like, you know, who the hell's touching me? Right. And this white guy, and he's probably 15, 18 years older than me, big smile on his face. And he says, "Man, I sure love your all's music." I said, "Thank you." I shook his hand. I appreciate that. And he points at the stage and he says, "I've seen this here band before, but I ain't never seen you before. Where'd you come from?" And I explained, well, yeah, he probably seen them because they told me they played here. But this is my first time. I just joined this band a couple months ago. So, "Man, I sure love your piano playing. This is the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." And so I was not offended, but I was rather surprised, given the fact that he's at least a decade and a half older than me. Right. He did not know the black origin of Jerry Lee Lewis's piano style.
Yeah, right.
I explained to him that Jerry Lee got it from the same place I did, from black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. Oh, no. I never
didn't buy that.
Like that with you. So I'm thinking, okay, well, you know, dude here never heard Little Richard or Fats Domino.
Yeah.
You know, I said, "Look, man," I said, "Jerry Lee is a good friend of mine." I said, "He's told me himself where his influences came from." he didn't believe that either.
Yeah, I
But he
bet.
was so fascinated with me
Yeah,
that he wanted me to come back to his table and let him buy me a drink.
Right on.
I go back to his table. I don't drink alcohol, but I let him buy me a cranberry juice. He
Right.
pays the waitress. He takes his glass. He clinks my glass and cheers me. And he says, "You know, this is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a black man."
Mm.
You know, he's making, this guy was having a night of first, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Amazing.
anyway,
Amazing.
I was rather surprised, given my background.
Yeah.
At my age at that time, I sat down with literally thousands of white people or anybody else and had a meal, a beverage, a conversation.
Yeah.
How is it that this guy, as old as he was, had never done that before? And I
Right.
know for a fact that there are black people in Frederick, Maryland. I've seen them. So how did he miss them all, right? So innocently, I asked him, I said, why? And I wasn't trying to be facetious. I was curious.
Mm.
And he looked down at the table. He didn't answer me. And I asked him again. And his buddy sitting next to him elbowed him and said, tell him. I said, tell me. Because now I'm mystified, like, what's going on here? And he says, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, shit.
I started laughing at the guy.
Shit.
Because now I think he's jerking me around.
Yeah.
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 Why would a Klansman put his arm around my shoulder, praise my ability, want to buy me a drink and hang out?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way, right?
No.
So I'm laughing, thinking he's pulling a joke on me. He goes in his pocket, pulls out his wallet, hands me his Klan membership card.
Whoa.
I recognize that red circle, white cross, blood drop. I go, whoa, this thing is for real. So I stopped laughing because it wasn't funny anymore, right?
No. No.
And but we talked, had a good time. We talked about the Klan, talked about some other things.
Right.
And he gave me his phone number and wanted me to call him whenever I was to return to the Silver Dollar Lounge because he wanted to tell his friends, the ones with the pointed hats and robes.
Yeah.
Tell his friends, about, as he put it, the black guy who plays like Jerry Lee. Now, I'm not sure if he called me a black guy to his friends or not.
Yeah.
That's how he explained it to me, right?
Mm.
So he wanted to bring them to see. I was a novelty for him. So I would call him every 6 weeks and say, hey, man, I call him on a Wednesday or Thursday and say, hey, man, I'm playing down at the Silver Dollar.
You'd call him, yeah.
He'd come Friday and Saturday.
He'd come
bring
see.
Klans women and Klans men. They come in street clothes, not robes and hoods.
Right.
But they would gather around near the stage and watch me play. And then they'd get out on the dance floor and dance. Yeah. And then on the breaks, I'd make my way over to his table, thank him for coming, say hello. Some of the Klan were curious about me. They wanted to meet me and talk to me. And so they hung there. But two of them, every time I walked over towards the table, they'd get up and move to the other side of the room.
Wow.
So the implication was, we don't want to touch you. We don't want to shake your hand. We don't want to talk to you. We just want to look at you. Mm. Okay, fine. So move on.
Like you're like some sort of Martian or something. It's bizarre.
Yeah, exactly. Because,
that's so bizarre.
They don't scrutinize people outside of their little bubble.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was the guy that gave me the information for the leader.
Oh, he's the guy that
Yeah, and that happened a couple years later.
Yeah.
But by that time he was out of the Klan.
Okay. Because there were a bunch of them.
He was fearful. He was fearful for my safety.
Oh, so was that the first guy that you kind of turned?
Well, the first Klansman that I encountered, I beat him up, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a whole different story.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't want to mess with you, Daryl. Those hands, man. Those hands move with grace, but I look at them, they're like mitts. He probably had a bad day, that dude.
But, I left that band at the end of that year. And so I lost track of my Klan, connections.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, it dawned on me, Daryl, you blew it. The answer to your question that has been plaguing you since the age of 10, it fell right into your lap. You didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
Who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization that has over 100-year history of practicing hating people who don't look like them or who don't believe as they believe. Yeah. Get back in contact with that Klansman.
Wow.
Get him to hook you up with the leader.
But not everybody would do that, Daryl. I mean, that's really remarkable to me that you would go that far to do that. I mean, it's you serve such a you get what a service you did for everyone. You know, I'm not talking African American, everyone. I mean, to do that, that's such bravery. I mean, it just blows my mind
Well,
that
see,
you would do that.
You call it bravery.
I
You know,
do.
For me, I would call it. Truly, I'm not exaggerating or trying to be humble or whatever. For me, it was more curiosity.
Yeah,
courage.
I know you say that a lot.
But I'll tell you why though, because you know, I'll say this, and maybe it'll make sense, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Because I've been exposed to so many different cultures as a kid, all around the world, I just considered white supremacy just another culture.
Yeah.
You know, and I treat all cultures alike. Now, I will say this, perhaps, maybe, if I never did all that traveling and I grew up here in my own country the whole time, maybe I wouldn't be doing this work today. Maybe I'd be trying to stay as far away from those people as I could.
Yeah.
You know, but I truly think it was my exposure to different kinds of people that enabled me to not feel out of place
and to be curious that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, I you know, since you know, look, your story and these stories are so amazing. I got, well, you sent us some music, and I want to play a little bit of something that so people can understand what this guy heard the way you're playing. You sent us 4 tracks. You said, you know, let's go make let's go. What was that? Leave Me Alone. How about the boogie? I want to play one of the tracks that you sent me.
Whatever you want.
How about is Leave Me Alone a good boogie woogie track, or how about
Leave Me Alone is a good blues shuffle.
Okay, or let me boogie with you, boogie woogie. How about that one? You want to put that guy on there?
Either one. Let's try
Yeah. Here we go. Cool.
Come on, pretty baby, get your tail out on the floor. I'm gonna wrap my arms around you and rock you till your body is sore. Let me boogie with you, woogie, all night long, rocking your roll. Make love to you, baby, right out here on the floor. I've been wanting to dance with a girl, honey, just like you. Are you the kind of girl who let me dance like I do? And let me boogie with your woogie all night long, rocking your roll. Make love to you, baby, right out here on the floor.
That's it.
When I dance with you, I get a feeling I never felt before. Come on and shake it for me, baby, 'cause I really dig your meat. Won't you grind me some more? And let me boogie with your woogie all night long, rocking your roll. Make love to you, baby, right out here on the floor. Let me boogie with your woogie all
Man.
night long, rocking your roll. Make love to you, baby,
Listen, man.
right out here on the floor.
I thought
I
that
mean-
sax player's head was going to explode.
That's Ron Holloway.
Damn.
Oh, wow. I know.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing. I mean, it sounds great, but
Yeah, man.
so did you ever play with? You were friends with Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yes.
Did you
Yeah.
ever did you ever do any gigs with him? Did you ever?
Yeah.
Gig?
I was on a lot of shows with him because I worked with Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it'd be a rock and roll revival package. It'd be Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee, Little Richard, or Chubby Checker, whoever. But one time, I've known Jerry Lee since I was a teenager. But one time we were doing a gig, and Jerry Lee was there solo. And he doesn't like playing solo for audiences. He does it, on his own by himself. But he didn't have his band, and I was backing up Sam Moore from Sam and Dick.
All right.
Yeah.
And so I said, I went over to Jerry's dressing room, and he was all bent out of shape because he didn't have his band. And I said, well, Jerry, do you want to use my band? He goes, could I? I said, sure. So my band backed him up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, your band must have been cooking because Jerry needs that. I had a buddy of mine in Memphis that played drums with Jerry for a while, and he said, you had to be driving that shit.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
You had to be driving that shit.
Yeah.
It's Freddie. I had a moment with Daryl. We did, my friend Tangray Hayward came up and sat in.
Tanger.
Yeah.
Sure,
We did further on up the road.
Nice.
And I started playing it like the last waltz kind of version, like a double shuffle.
Right.
And Daryl looks at me and goes, give the 3-legged dog thing. He goes, I knew right away. He goes, kadunk, kadunk, kadunk. Gave me one look.
Lame
Do
dog.
that thing.
Yeah.
Kadunk, kadunk.
Yeah,
And it was like, oh my God, he's like the master, man,
nice.
at doing that. Like, and one of the greatest moments of that night for me was when he educates the audience on boogie woogie piano and the way you play, and it's so entertaining. I mean, I wanted to almost get off my drums and move in front and watch you do it because it was phenomenal. It was so much fun, man. It's so great, man. I mean,
DJ Fontana's done that feel with Elvis as well.
Yeah,
man.
Absolutely. I worked with DJ Fontana and the Jordanaires a few times.
Oh man,
get out! Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I met him once. He was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him one time. He was very nice.
Yeah,
Him and
very nice.
Scotty.
Sweetheart.
Wow.
I never got to meet Scotty. I always liked Scotty. I never got to meet him, but I played a few times with James Burton, who was
wow.
later on. Yeah.
I mean, the legends of rock and roll, man.
Yeah,
these guys. I
Well,
mean,
Jerry Lee was pretty much the last man standing.
Yeah.
He just passed away a couple months ago. All the solo performers like Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee,
Little Richard,
Richard, Bo Diddley. They're all gone now.
Bo Diddley. Yeah.
Just Dwayne Eddy was around back then.
Oh right.
But I mean, he wasn't like a singing pioneer or whatever.
Right.
That was the one really nice thing about us hanging out with Linda Gale. We were doing those shows with Linda Gale because Linda Gale would tell us these stories about Jerry. And I'll tell you what, I was kind of blown away by Linda Gale because she'd be walking up with her purse. She'd sit behind the piano, moving kind of slow. And all of a sudden her leg would go up on the piano and she'd be playing the piano.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, man. Like, rock and roll, baby.
Let me tell you something.
Amazing.
As musicians, that, and for the audience who may not know, we talk about Linda Gale and Jerry Lee. Linda Gale Lewis is Jerry Lee's sister.
Yeah.
And they have an identical way of playing the piano.
They do.
It must be in the water in Fairday, Louisiana. That's where they're from.
Yeah.
Because Jerry Lee's first cousin, two first cousins, Mickey Gilly,
Swaggart,
and Jimmy Lee Swaggart. Yeah. They all play that similar boogie style of piano, man.
Wow.
Yeah. So and Linda Gale is fantastic. But you see people like that, even Pine Top Perkins or Johnny.
Yeah, I met him once. I wanted to tell you about meeting him. Lovely man.
Up to the piano real slow, and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And boy, when they sit down,
man,
it's a whole different story. They're in another zone.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's all of a sudden like they're not. Yeah, they're in a different place. It blew me away about her. I met Pine Top Perkins at South by Southwest about 15 years ago. I met him. He was in this little, and it was weird. He was there doing something for South by Southwest, but he went to this little bar where he could play. He just wanted to go play his piano.
That's right. Exactly.
Man.
Because listen, you don't stop playing music because you get old. You get old because you stop playing music.
Yeah, I like that, man.
It's true.
True.
I tell you,
He died at the age of 97, still playing, man. I was a pallbearer at Pine Top's funeral.
Wow. Are you got any gigs coming up soon? Do you have any stuff coming up that you're playing?
Yeah, I'm playing the legendary Rhythm and Blues Cruise.
Oh, right on.
In a couple of weeks. This one is going to the South Caribbean.
Oh, sweet. How long are you on that? A couple of
1 week.
Oh, nice. Well, that's a nice getaway for you, man. You're playing.
Yeah,
That's awesome,
my
man.
buddies.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great. You know, when you mentioned there's a session, I'll get a hold of you on the back side here because I got something I'd love you to do.
Okay.
That Kenny and I were involved with that Kenny mentioned. You know, you got to get Daryl up here to play on this thing. So we'll figure it out. You know,
all right.
Because you're down in D.C., which is about a 4 or 5 hour drive for you, something like that. You know.
Where is it?
We're in Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia's only like 2.5 hours.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. We'll figure it out. But listen, man, I at the time went by so fast. You were just a joy to listen to, man. It was unbelievable. And I hope maybe some other time you come back and we'll see you again. But man,
we will call this part 1, and we'll definitely do part 2.
There you go.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, man. Thank you so much, Daryl.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
It was a real honor for all of us, man. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Totally.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Freddie,
Yeah.
Kenny, thank you, bros. Thanks for joining me. It's always a guest.
Pleasure.
I really didn't get kicked out of Cub Scouts. They just kind of said maybe you should try another group.
Well, when you go off the air, I'll tell you why you got kicked out of Cub Scouts.
It was a good move. Okay, listen, everybody, have a wonderful day. I want to thank our sponsors, the School of Rock on Mainline, and keep on coming back. We'll see you in a few weeks on In the Pocket. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
David Uosikkinen In the Pocket is sponsored by the School of Rock Mainline. I'd like to thank the School of Rock Mainline, located at 511 Old Lancaster Road in Berwyn. You can visit their website at schoolofrock.com. Ask for Dave Marsh or Rick Allison.